The idea of deporting somebody because of the way in which they come to this country is absurd, no matter what temporary laws may be put in place by a mad and self-satisfied despotistic Home Secretary who has exceeded her or his powers. When tested in a court, I'm afraid both the laws put forward by Suella Braverman last year and early this year will fall flat. That's what I predict anyway. And I think her Rwanda plan will also, in the end, fall foul of the courts. Not the international courts, but courts in this country. But it doesn't matter how many times the Home Secretary, in whatever incarnation, decries, quote, lefty lawyers. By undermining the law, they are undermining the power of the Home Office. And that is the absurdity of it. Now, although Rishi Sunak tried to draw a parallel between the Home Office's support for Rwanda and the Rwandan scheme and Georgina Meloni's support for the Albanian scheme, there is a big difference. The Albanian scheme is essentially a processing centre, as far as I know. And I would welcome anybody to come back to me and say, you know, you're wrong. But I believe that's the case. And even at that, it's causing controversy in Italian law circles and opposition. I think broadly, the Albanian scheme is a good one. We can't go down that route at the moment because of the complete balls up that Suella Braverman made with the Albanian government. But I'm sure that in his meetings with I was going to say Enver Hoxha. Enver Hoxha is the fellow who did the sort of bad news in 1967. You know, you think it's bad this year; it'll be even worse next year. But let's not sugarcoat the pill. But Enver Hoxha is a man who built all these little shelters, concrete bunkers all the way around Albania to protect Albania from the inevitability of attack by the West, because he was paranoid and crazy. But the Labour Party is looking, I think, seriously at the possibility of outsourcing the processing part of illegal migration, the processing part of checking migrants and confirming their refugee status, or stopping their refugee status and therefore declaring them to be illegal migrants. And Albania may well be a future site for that. And I think Britain would object far less than Italy. It's already crossed the Rubicon, and I think Rishi Sunak, in his meeting with Giorgia Meloni the other day, Eddie Rama was on hand, and I'm sure that Rishi Sunak and Eddie Rama will have talked, and Eddie Rama would have pointed out that, you know, now is probably not the time to do the sort of deal that can and probably will be done by the Labour Party. The Labour Party has ruled out backing the idea of Rwanda deportation, but I think the idea of a processing centre elsewhere would come significantly cheaper than 8 or 9 million a day for hotels, and I think probably would be a significantly more a more honest approach. It might also in itself deter people from coming to the UK. Of course, in sending people to another country, we would then be factoring in the plane costs to that country, but we would also be effectively helping that country's economy. I think Albania is a very good choice. And if Albania is doing this job for Italy, it can also do the job for the UK as well. I'm not sure in the long term whether having a huge swathe of processing centres and detention centres along the coast in Albania is the right image for the country as it tries to get into the EU. But I think it's a better option for us than the absurd Rwanda scheme. And you've got to remember that Labour has already flirted with the idea of offshoring migration. That was something which came up long ago during the Tony Blair premiership, and I think under Lord Blunkett. Blunkett, in fact, I think had floated ideas of the same sort of deal being done in Tanzania, but I think Albania would be a much better option. Starmer apparently is open to exploring practical, realistic solutions, but a way of blocking somebody automatically because of the way in which they've come to the country is to defy the 1951 Refugee Convention, no matter what laws people quote in the comments section about only entering the country with valid documentation. That is true, but that requirement for valid documentation is waived when somebody claims asylum. And under the 1951 Refugee Convention that we're still signatories to, it doesn't matter how somebody has got to the country, legally or illegally, using a legal route or an illegal route. It doesn't matter. The moment they apply for asylum, their application must be processed by the country that the application is made to, which means that the new law, the law made earlier this year by Suella Braverman, is nonsensical in terms of international law, and it will be challenged. And so far, I don't think it is. And therefore, you come back down to Max Robespierre's point: if illegal, why no arrests? Because an arrest, a detention, an arrest is simply not credible, or probably the word arrest isn't quite the right term, because many of these migrants have been detained. Have they been prosecuted, and why are they not in prison is the better question, and that I think is implicit in what Max is saying. And Max and I have had many conversations on breakfast time, Sunday brunch, and I look forward to some more of those. But yes, Max is a very sound individual, as indeed is Alex of Political X, and yes, I look forward. I look forward to a debate with anybody who takes a different view. I think our views only become clear because they are challenged, and sometimes you need a bit of time to work out what is the bedrock on which that challenge depends, and how do you confront that? You instinctively know it's wrong, maybe, or you instinctively know it's right. So then you need to find the evidence. It's not always a matter of a spontaneous response. As for ministers and politicians, they should have this information at their fingertips, and they should be briefed, and that's what civil servants should be doing. So there is no excuse for the sort of nonsense, the nonsensical interviews done by people like Suella Braverman in the past, when she didn't know that Rwanda was responsible for killing refugees simply because they were protesting that they hadn't been given the food which was allocated by the United Nations.